Home Improvement premiered in 1991 as a light-hearted family sitcom about everyday life, marriage, and the chaos of raising kids in suburban America. But once the cameras stopped rolling, the real stories were far darker than the jokes ever suggested. Careers quietly collapsed, bodies broke down, and fame became a weight some never escaped. What really happened to the cast we thought we knew so well? Join us as we uncover where they are now in 2026, and you might not recognize them at all. Tim Allen as Tim the Toolman. Taylor. Tim the Toolman Taylor in Home Improvement, 1991, was portrayed by Tim Allen. At 38 years old, he stepped into the role in 1991, turning exaggerated masculinity into a national punchline. The character's noise, confidence, and chaos made the show feel effortless. Behind the laugh track, however, the margin for error was razor-thin. Timothy Allen Dick, born June 13, 1953, in Denver, Colorado, entered television fame with a past that could have erased him at any moment. Long before Home Improvement ruled ABC, his life had been nearly dismantled by a 1978 federal cocaine trafficking conviction, followed by prison time that left a permanent mark. When success finally came, it came with fear of exposure, fear of relapse, fear that one misstep would undo years of rebuilding. Even while landing major projects like the Santa Claus and voicing Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story, he was constantly outrunning his own history. The pressure did not remain abstract. Years of internal strain manifested through substance addiction, anxiety, and exhaustion, culminating publicly with a DUI arrest in 1997. That moment forced him into rehab and sobriety, not as a career move, but as a lifeline. Allen later admitted that addiction hollowed him out long before audiences noticed, affecting his mental health and forcing a complete restructuring of how he worked, traveled, and lived. Rather than retreat, Allen recalibrated. He reduced exposure to destructive environments and leaned into structured work, continuing long-term commitments like the Toy Story franchise, while later anchoring Last Man Standing. In recent years, projects such as Shifting Gears reflect a quieter, more controlled phase of his career, less about dominance, more about endurance. Today, Tim Allen is 73 years old. He remains active but selective, publicly sober, and disciplined in how he protects his health. With an estimated net worth of around $100 million, his legacy is no longer just about laughter. It is about survival after nearly losing everything. Taran Noah Smith as Mark Taylor. Mark Taylor, the youngest son in Home Improvement, 1991, was played by Taran Noah Smith. At 7 years old, he entered the series in 1991, growing up on camera until the show ended in 1999, when he was 15. To audiences, he seemed protected by sitcom warmth. In reality, the pressure was quietly accumulating. Taran Noah Smith, born April 8, 1984, in California, found himself suffocating under the expectations that followed early fame. While Home Improvement brought stability and recognition, it also removed choice from his life. As the show ended, he made a decision that shocked Hollywood. He walked away from acting entirely at 16, rejecting auditions and scripts that others would have fought for. The industry interpreted his exit as wasted potential, but for Smith it was an act of escape, not rebellion. The fallout was severe. In 2001, Smith publicly accused his parents of mismanaging his $1.5 million trust fund, triggering a lawsuit that quickly became tabloid spectacle. Though he later withdrew the claim and admitted they had been protecting him, the damage was done. Public opinion turned harsh, family bonds fractured, and his name became associated not with performance, but with conflict and loss of control. Health and stability did not come easily afterward. Smith later acknowledged periods of emotional distress, compounded by a DUI arrest in Burbank, where drugs were reportedly found in his vehicle. The incident reflected deeper struggles with judgment, stress, and direction after early fame. Recovery for Smith came not through cameras, but through withdrawal from celebrity culture altogether. By 2026, Taran Noah Smith is 42 years old. He lives largely outside the entertainment industry, working in vegan business ventures, disaster relief, and later as a technical manager teaching people to pilot submersibles. His estimated net worth of around $300,000, mostly from residuals, reflects not decline, but a deliberate rejection of fame that once defined him. Zachary Ty Bryan as Brad Taylor. Brad Taylor in Home Improvement, 1991, was played by Zachary Ty Bryan. At only 10 years old, he joined the series in 1991, embodying confidence far beyond his age. The role grew with him until 1999, when he exited at 18, frozen in public memory as the perfect sitcom son. Real life proved far less forgiving. Zachary Tyler Bryan, born October 9, 1981 in Aurora, Colorado, faced a brutal transition once the show ended. While he appeared in films such as The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift, and Thor, Hammer of the Gods, none restored the stability or recognition he once knew. Roles became smaller, gaps grew longer, and the identity built around childhood fame began to fracture under professional uncertainty. As opportunities dwindled, deeper issues surfaced. Bryan's life became defined by repeated legal troubles, including domestic violence arrests and multiple DUI charges, each incident stripping away credibility. Alongside the legal consequences came struggles with substance abuse and declining mental stability, creating a cycle that was difficult to escape. Instead of a single collapse, his career eroded in slow motion, played out in courtrooms rather than casting offices. Attempts to re-enter the industry appeared sporadically. A limited return in the Guardians of Justice hinted at possibility, but ongoing arrests, probation violations, and health-related stress undermined momentum. Reports of exhaustion, emotional volatility, and continued dependency painted the picture of someone overwhelmed by the weight of lost direction and unresolved damage. Now, Zachary Ty Bryan is 45 years old. He remains alive, but largely disconnected from mainstream acting, his name now more associated with court records than credits. Once estimated near $5 million, his net worth has declined sharply under lawsuits, legal fees, and inactivity, leaving behind a painful contrast between who he was and what remains. Pamela Anderson, as Lisa, the Tool-Time girl in Home Improvement, 1991, was played by Pamela Anderson. At 24 years old, she joined the series in 1991, becoming one of television's most recognizable faces. Though the role appeared light and decorative, it became the launchpad for a far heavier destiny. By the mid-1990s, fame had already begun to distort her life. Pamela Denise Anderson, born July 1, 1967, in British Columbia, Canada, rose quickly and paid for it slowly. Leaving Home Improvement to star in Baywatch turned her into a global symbol, but also locked her into a narrow image that Hollywood refused to let evolve. Projects like Barbed Wire exposed how brutally the industry punished women who were seen before they were heard. The stress soon became physical. Anderson revealed she had contracted hepatitis C, likely through a shared tattoo needle, a diagnosis that shadowed her for years. At the time, the disease carried fear, stigma, and uncertainty, forcing her to work while privately believing her life might be cut short. Although she was successfully cured by 2015, the psychological toll of living with a chronic illness under constant media assault left lasting scars. Rather than retreat, Anderson transformed her career. In the years leading up to 2026, she reclaimed her narrative through projects like the Netflix documentary Pamela, a love story, her memoir Love, Pamela, a Broadway debut in Chicago, and a critically praised dramatic return in The Last Showgirl, 2024, which earned her Golden Globe and SAG nominations. These works reframed her not as a symbol, but as a survivor finally being taken seriously. By 2026, Pamela Anderson is 59 years old. She remains creatively active across film, theater, writing, and vegan advocacy, having outlived the era that tried to consume her. With an estimated net worth of around $20 million, her true victory lies not in wealth, but in reclaiming dignity after decades of being misunderstood. Jonathan Taylor Thomas as Randy Taylor. Randy Taylor, the sharp-witted middle son in Home Improvement, 1991, was played by Jonathan Taylor Thomas. At 10 years old, he joined the show in 1991, departing in 1998 at 17. To millions, he was the thinking kid with the knowing smile. Behind that image was a teenager under relentless pressure. Jonathan Taylor Thomas, born September 8, 1981, in Pennsylvania, USA, became a cultural phenomenon almost overnight. While balancing Home Improvement, he voiced young Simba in The Lion King, 1994, and starred in films like Tom and Huck. Fame came fast, but it never felt natural to him. As expectations mounted, so did the strain. Academic pressure, fan obsession, and public speculation followed him everywhere, turning everyday life into performance. The physical cost was real. Thomas later admitted he frequently worked through severe migraine headaches, exhaustion, and anxiety while still a teenager. The constant juggling of school, filming, and public life pushed him to a breaking point. He made the difficult decision to leave Home Improvement early, later stating that continuing at that pace could have put him in an early grave. In the years that followed, Thomas stepped away from fame almost entirely. He pursued higher education, later returning briefly to television through Last Man Standing, where he both acted and directed multiple episodes between 2013 and 2016. Directing fulfilled a long-held ambition, but anxiety nearly stopped him from returning at all. Afterward, he chose privacy again, allowing rumors and speculation to swirl while he lived quietly, away from cameras. Now, Jonathan Taylor Thomas is 45 years old. He remains largely absent from Hollywood by choice, occasionally engaging in union work and creative projects behind the scenes. With an estimated net worth of around $16 million, his story stands as a rare example of someone who survived fame by stepping away from it, before it destroyed his health. Patricia Richardson as Jill Taylor, the emotional anchor of Home Improvement, 1991, was portrayed by Patricia Richardson. At 40 years old, she stepped into the role in 1991, remaining until 1999 when she was 48. On screen, she was calm, grounded, and resilient. Off-screen, the cost of holding the show together was far heavier than audiences ever saw. Patricia Richardson, born February 23, 1951 in Maryland, USA, spent years being quietly passed over before Home Improvement finally arrived. Even after success, she was repeatedly replaced or sidelined in projects, a reminder that television stability for women was fragile. The show's demanding production schedule became relentless, forcing her to work at an exhausting pace while simultaneously carrying the emotional weight of the series. Despite earning 4 Emmy nominations and 2 Golden Globe nominations, she was still fighting to be valued as an equal creative force. The strain eventually took a physical and emotional toll. Long shooting hours, stress, and constant pressure weakened her health over time, leaving her drained even as ratings soared. She later became deeply involved with advocacy work connected to progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, after losing a close family member to the disease, a loss that sharpened her awareness of neurological decline and mortality. Her life became increasingly shaped by proximity to illness, caregiving realities, and emotional fatigue. Rather than retreat, Richardson rebuilt her career on her own terms. She led the medical drama Strong Medicine, 2000 to 2005, returned to theater, appeared in political drama The West Wing, and continued steady work in television, films, and independent projects. She also stepped into leadership roles within SAGAFTRA, fighting for fair treatment long after walking away from a massive payday when she refused unequal pay in a proposed 9th season of Home Improvement. By 2026, Patricia Richardson is 75 years old. She remains respected, selective, and outspoken about fairness in Hollywood. With an estimated net worth of around $25 million, her legacy is defined not by longevity alone, but by the strength it took to walk away when silence would have been easier. Richard Karn as Al Borland. Al Borland, the loyal, steady presence on Tool Time, was portrayed by Richard Karn. At 35 years old, he joined the series in 1991, remaining until 1999, when he was 43. His quiet humor and gentle awkwardness made him unforgettable. Yet behind the plaid shirts and patient smiles was an actor carrying immense professional uncertainty. Richard Karn Wilson, born February 17, 1956, in Seattle, Washington, entered Home Improvement almost by accident, replacing another actor at the last possible moment. Despite the show's massive success, Karn lived with constant pressure to prove he wasn't disposable. Typecasting followed him relentlessly, limiting dramatic opportunities even as audiences adored him. While the show soared to 8 seasons, Karn quietly absorbed the anxiety of being permanently labeled Al, overshadowing his broader acting range. As the years progressed, the strain manifested physically. Fans later noticed his dramatic weight loss, sparking concern and speculation. The visible transformation reflected deeper issues tied to stress, aging, and the physical toll of decades in entertainment. The shift shocked longtime viewers, highlighting how fame can quietly erode health even without scandal or excess. After Home Improvement, Karn refused to disappear. He reinvented himself as a television host, fronting Family Feud, 2002 to 2006, and later Bingo America, embracing stability over stardom. In 2021, he returned to familiar ground with Assembly Required, reconnecting with fans while carefully managing his public exposure. Today, Richard Karn is 70 years old. He remains active, selective, and visibly transformed, prioritizing health and personal sustainability. With an estimated net worth of around $10 million, his legacy is not loud, but enduring, shaped by resilience rather than reinvention. Earl Hindman as Wilson W. Wilson, Jr. Wilson W. Wilson, Jr., the wise, unseen neighbor in Home Improvement, 1991, was portrayed by Earl Hindman. At 49 years old, he joined the series in 1991, remaining until 1999, when he was 57. His half-hidden face became one of television's most unusual visual gags. Yet the man behind the fence carried a long and demanding career few audiences fully recognized. Earl John Hindman, born October 20, 1942 in Arizona, USA, had already built a steady reputation long before Home Improvement. He was respected for serious dramatic work on Ryan's Hope, 1975 to 1989, and for tense film roles such as The Parallax View, 1974. Despite consistency, he never crossed into stardom, instead becoming one of television's most reliable character actors. Behind the scenes, years of physical strain and long-term smoking quietly shaped his final decade. Lung cancer crept in gradually, turning daily life into a series of medical battles. As the illness progressed, breathing became labor, energy disappeared, and pain management replaced auditions. The disease stripped away the calm wisdom audiences associated with Wilson, replacing it with relentless physical decline. Even while ill, Hindman continued working. His final years included appearances in Law and Order, Criminal Intent, and the film Final, 2001. Each role carried the weight of finality, as colleagues noticed his thinning frame and fading strength. Earl Hindman passed away on December 29, 2003, at 61 years old, from lung cancer in Stamford, Connecticut. His death was quiet, much like the man himself. At the time of his passing, his estimated net worth was around $4 million, leaving behind a legacy defined not by visibility, but by restraint, dignity, and quiet wisdom. Debbie Dunning as Heidi Keppert. Heidi Keppert, the iconic tool-time assistant in Home Improvement, 1991, was played by Debbie Dunning. At 27 years old, she officially joined the cast in 1993, remaining until 1999, when she was 33. On screen, she projected confidence and energy. Off-screen, her position was far more fragile than viewers realized. Deborah Debbie Dunning, born July 11, 1966, in Burbank, California, entered Home Improvement under intense pressure after replacing a globally recognized predecessor. Every appearance carried scrutiny, comparison, and the constant risk of rejection. Even as she appeared in 148 episodes, her role remained narrowly defined, limiting her ability to transition into dramatic or lead television work. Despite side successes like Wicked Wicked Games, 2006, the industry continued to reduce her to a single image. The long-term stress left marks that went beyond career frustration. Dunning later spoke openly about profound personal loss and emotional exhaustion tied to grief, trauma, and relentless responsibility. Her life became deeply intertwined with serious medical realities, including neurological disorders and cancer affecting those closest to her. These experiences reshaped her priorities and sharpened her awareness of physical vulnerability and emotional endurance. Rather than retreat, she redirected her energy into purpose-driven work. Before 2026, Dunning created and hosted Debbie Dunning's Dude Ranch Roundup, 2017 to present, traveling across rural America while championing charity work, especially for burn victims and cancer research. The shift marked a reclaiming of identity, away from sitcom archetypes and towards storytelling rooted in healing and authenticity. Today, Debbie Dunning is 60 years old. She remains active, grounded, and visibly fulfilled outside mainstream Hollywood. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, her journey reflects survival through reinvention, quietly proving that legacy isn't measured only by fame, but by endurance. Mickey Jones as Pete Bilker. Pete Bilker, the rough-edged contractor on Home Improvement, 1991, was played by Mickey Jones. At 50 years old, he joined the show in 1991, remaining until 1999 when he was 58. His gruff presence added texture to the series' blue-collar world. Off-screen, his life was marked by constant physical wear and long-term health struggle. Mickey Jones, born June 10, 1941 in Houston, Texas, lived multiple careers in one lifetime. Before acting, he was a respected musician, touring with Bob Dylan and co-founding the First Edition with Kenny Rogers, contributing to 17 gold records. Transitioning to acting in midlife was not glamorous. It meant taking supporting roles, guest appearances, and character parts to survive. Films like National Lampoon's Vacation, 1983, and Total Recall, 1990, kept him visible, but never secure. Years of intense physical labor, on stage, on set, and on the road, eventually caught up with him. Chronic illness, including long-term diabetes, steadily eroded his strength. Complications mounted as mobility declined, hospital visits increased, and recovery times stretched longer. Still, Jones refused to retreat. He continued acting into his 70s, appearing in Justified, 2011 to 2014, and contributing to the documentary No Direction Home, Bob Dylan. In 2007, he published his autobiography, That Would Be Me, a reflection on survival rather than fame. His later work carried a quieter urgency, shaped by the awareness that time was narrowing. Sadly, Mickey Jones passed away on February 7, 2018, at 76 years old, due to complications from diabetes. His death closed a life lived at full volume across music, television, and film. At the time of his passing, his estimated net worth was around $2 million, a modest sum compared to the cultural ground he covered. Proof that endurance does not always come with fortune. William O'Leary as Marty Taylor. Marty Taylor, Tim Taylor's volatile younger brother in Home Improvement, 1991, was portrayed by William O'Leary. At 37 years old, his character brought tension and unpredictability into the Taylor family. Off-screen, his career followed a similarly unstable path. William O'Leary, born October 19, 1957, in Illinois, USA, was a classically trained actor navigating an industry that rarely rewarded subtlety. Despite strong performances in films like Bull Durham, 1988, and Hot Shots, 1991, long-term recognition remained elusive. Even during Home Improvement, his work arrived in bursts rather than momentum, forcing him to constantly reset his footing in an unforgiving system. The stress of inconsistency took its toll. Auditions, rejections, and long stretches of uncertainty wore down his confidence and health. The emotional strain of sustaining an acting career without stability shaped his later choices. Energy, once poured into ambition, shifted toward survival and control. Rather than disappear, O'Leary pivoted. Before 2026, he continued working in television, notably as the antagonist General Zaviax in Kamen Rider, Dragon Knight, proving his adaptability across genres. His later years favored selectivity over exposure, choosing roles that allowed balance rather than burnout. By 2026, William O'Leary is 69 years old. He remains a quiet presence in the industry, respected more by peers than headlines. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his story reflects the reality of many working actors, talented, resilient, and often unseen. Blake Clark as Harry Turner. Harry Turner, the gruff but good-natured contractor in Home Improvement, 1991, was played by Blake Clark. At 48 years old, his presence brought weight and realism to the show's blue-collar world. Yet his career was shaped far beyond sitcom laughter. Blake Clark, born February 2, 1946 in Georgia, USA, entered Hollywood late, carrying scars invisible to audiences. Comedy became a survival tool rather than a shortcut to fame, and his roles often leaned on volume and toughness to mask deeper strain. Even while appearing on Home Improvement, he was still fighting for stability, bouncing between guest roles and stand-up sets, never fully certain where the next paycheck would come from. Films like The Waterboy, 1998, kept him visible but rarely secure. The physical and psychological toll accumulated quietly. Years of high-energy performances, travel, and pressure aged him faster than the calendar suggested. Friends noted exhaustion behind the booming voice, and long-term strain left him increasingly selective about work. His body carried the cost of decades spent pushing through pain rather than pausing. A profound turning point came after the death of Jim Varney in 2000. Clark inherited the role of Slinky Dog in Toy Story 3, 2010. Not as a replacement, but as a guardian of a legacy. The responsibility was emotional as much as professional. Voice acting allowed him to continue working while preserving his health, offering stability without physical punishment. He remained active in animation, television, and selective film roles into the 2020s. Now, Blake Clark is 80 years old. He stands as a survivor of endurance rather than hype, still respected for his voice work and long career. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, his legacy is one of persistence, quietly lasting long after louder careers faded. Time has a quiet way of changing people, sometimes so slowly you don't notice it until decades have passed. The faces that once filled our living rooms every week have moved through success, struggle, illness, and survival in ways few of us ever imagined. Which transformation shocked you the most, and whose story stayed with you the longest? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this journey through Home Improvement, 1991. Cast Then and Now, 2026. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more unforgettable cast updates and untold stories.